For over 15 years, Saturdays and A Legal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, I say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, training camp and the preseason are complete. All eyes on Wednesday. The Jets and the Oilers, the regular season is mere days away. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours, courtesy of our friends at Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site, here to talk about the Winnipeg Jets for the next couple hours, preview the upcoming season, delve deep into the Jets, delve deep into the Central Division, delve deep into the Western Conference, top to bottom coverage of your Winnipeg Jets for this Saturday morning. Gentlemen, good to see you both. How are things?
Things are, how could they not be great, boys? It's a happy new year if you're of the Jewish faith. So
yes.
Shana Tova to all of our Jewish friends and family. We got the
Indeed.
leaves falling. The air is getting colder. It's definitely getting colder at night. I've definitely noticed that over the last 3 or 4 days, but I mean, we got the NHL regular season already underway. My Devils picked up a big 4-1 win. I think we have to start off. I was going to say, Drew, we have to start off with maybe the biggest story in the NHL. Obviously, I'm not being serious here, but Johnny Kovacevic, 1 goal and 1 assist in the Devils' 4-1 win over Buffalo in Prague. You love to see it. Dave covered him for many years with the Manitoba Moose. He never got his chance with the Jets, but it's nice to see him thriving with the Devils. So, yeah, things are good, guys. I mean, it's a great time of the year. You got MLB playoffs. You got NFL football. I mean, there's so many reasons.
Won again, like they
always
won
8 in a row. So, I mean, things are good.
Things are good. Happy New Year to you as well, Mr. Minuk, on this Saturday morning. You know, as he's bringing the excitement, and I have to say I agree with it. It's, you know, you get to the point where training camp really becomes a grind, and I think everyone was feeling that it was just going on too long. The number of injuries that were suffered just this week alone, it seemed like every game had a marquee player, or, you know, being banged up, or at least a little bit. Fans were holding their breath. So nice to be done with that, and nice to get onto some meaningful games, and games that actually are going to matter in the win-loss column.
Yeah, there's no question about that, Drew. You're waiting for this to kind of the grind of it. And remember, the Jets only played 6 exhibition games that we had to pretend to get excited about, right, whereas, you know, other teams played at least 8. And one of the things I heard from the NHL this week was that, they're thinking about cutting it down. I'm like, that's wonderful. But then they thought, well, you know, we'll extend the regular season. It's like
84 game regular. They're saying 4 preseason games and an 84 game regular season, because you need to go that regular season needs to go all the way through the end of April.
Well, that's the crazy part. It's like, no, what you need to do is start the season earlier and end the season earlier, so people aren't, you know, still pretending to care about hockey in June when they really have already transferred their brains to other things. So look, it's been a lot of interesting things that have been happening. And of course, we've been documenting on illegalcurve.com and on our YouTube channel. So be sure you're subscribing, because that's basically your number one source, and the quickest source, might I add, to getting Jets news. I
think I've listened to Scott Arniel speak about 385 times now over the last 2 weeks. But no, I mean, Dave, you've been doing it. Kudos to you. You've been killing it, basically posting every single Jets or Moose related video on our YouTube channel. So if you have a few hours to kill this week,
a few months to kill. I mean, my God, the man's been producing content like nobody's business.
Well, anyway, so the point is, though, that get your for your viewing pleasure, not of course while we're live, but after the show you can check it all out. But no, it's been busy, and it's been a lot of information, and there's some disappointment from some fans who are hoping for that injection of youth. That was kind of like the one thing, as we were wondering what was going to happen. You know, we don't know yet. We know that what we can say is that Brad Lambert and Nikita Chibrikov did not play in last night's game. I thought it was interesting that Eric Comrie backed up Connor Hellebuck both the final 2 preseason games. I don't know if that's a tell or not. We can ask Mike McIntyre. He has some thoughts on that, I know. So that's one of the things I thought was interesting. But yeah, no Lambert, no Chibrikov. Doesn't necessarily mean...
We should mention Comrie only started the 1 game.
Right. Kakinen got... Did Kakinen get 1 or 2?
Kakinen got 2.
Yeah, Kakinen got 2. That's a fair point, Ez. But Comrie started the 1, but did back up the 2. And then the only thing I would say is, like I said, Scott Arniel on Thursday, so the game was on Friday. So on Thursday, Scott Arniel said, just because, that's not our final lineup necessarily tomorrow night. So we'll see. But and also no Salamonson. So, the Jets fans, and one of the things that Kevin Cheveldayoff back on July 1st, and that's the reason why we keep track of these things, said there's opportunity for youth. And we'll see if that stands the test of time or if they go in another way. And then the other question becomes, when there's injuries during the season in the top 6, do they call a Brad Lambert up or Nikita Chibrikov up, depending on their need? Or do they call a Dominic Toninato or an Axel Jonsson-Fjällby and just shift a 3rd or 4th liner up to there? So that's the thing you'll have to watch for. If again, we don't know, however, they're going to decide to, reduce their roster.
Sorry, I just want to mention this. Sorry, Drew, I know you want to get into, because we're going to do a comprehensive preview of the season here, but maybe the biggest news of the week in Jetsland, I was talking to Dave about this about 10 minutes before we went live here. Maybe the biggest bullet that the Jets dodged was not losing Simon Lundmark on waivers. Like, I don't know about you guys, but and we'll get the viewers in the chat and listeners in the podcast chiming in, but I mean, when Lundmark scored that goal on Wednesday against Calgary, I thought he might have made the team based on that. Not obviously just that one goal alone, but we talked about it last week. He's had a great training camp. He's had a great preseason. If the Jets would have lost Lundmark on waivers, speaking of Johnny Kovacevic or Declan Chisholm, then, we're having a different conversation, guys, about how the Jets lost a former 2nd-round pick on waivers. So I think this ties into the amount of depth that this team has, especially at the forward, when the forward group, it's unbelievable because, I mean, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, Dom Toninato, these guys are journeyman AHL, NHL tweeners. But a guy like Simon Lundmark, he's only 23 years old. Like, I was really worried, I'll be honest, that somebody was going to claim him. So I think it just shows you that the Jets defense is also maybe deeper than some people thought as well.
Well, it's almost become like Hanukkah. When it comes to the Jets defense, you don't know exactly where it's going to land on the calendar, but each and every year the Jets are going to lose a young defenseman on waivers that they've brought through their system. And so to your point there, Ezzy, because you have Declan Chisholm, you mentioned Johnny Kovacevic in New Jersey, and with Simon Lundmark, could have that been 3 for 3 in 3 straight years, losing a young defenseman that you've groomed into your system, that you've brought through your system, that you've spent a lot of developmental time and energy on. Losing him, they didn't or haven't as of yet, and who knows?
It is a big deal, Spency. Get that comment off. Come on, Spency. It's a huge deal. Just kidding.
But every single opportunity, every time you put a guy through waivers, especially a young player like that, there's the risk reward involved in it all. And the Jets obviously were confident that they could get him through, because really at this time, when they sent those guys or tried to send those guys through waivers to the Moose, so many players are moving through the rosters that it's not usually a huge opportunity for teams. Teams don't usually pick guys off waivers at that point. No. They wait till the final cuts to snag a guy or take a flyer on a guy. So, I think there was a little bit of strategery involved when the Jets made those moves to get Lundmark down to the AHL level. And he certainly proved himself, or he certainly had a more noticeable training camp than I would think anybody really expected going into it. But that's where I want to start. The training camp has concluded. It's been this last, 3 weeks or almost a month when you consider the captain's skates before that. What have we learned in this training camp, Dave? What is your main takeaway, if there is one in particular, about this Winnipeg Jets team for the 24-25 season that we've learned in the course of this training camp?
Well, I think the only thing you can say is if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because that seems to be the 110 points last season, and I guess they're hoping for the same sort of regular season success. I think that Scott Arniel and his coaching staff want to see what a healthy Gabriel Velarde can do with a healthy Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele. I think he likes Vlad Nemesnikov between Nikolai Ehlers and Cole Perfetti. We were thinking maybe that there'd be a modification, something that we have talked about on this show for years now, guys, that they may go to try and have a scoring third line and then have your shutdown line be the Lowry line. That part, I think, is still kind of, the jury is still out on that as to whether they're willing to try that sort of thought process. I mean, we've seen it a little bit in exhibition games, and Scott Arniel's kind of joked about it. And now in that instance, do you get like a Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov playing on a line with, a type, whomever, Morgan Barron, for example, who maybe is a little more established and can give them, but they can all kind of grind and score, and we'll see. Anyways, my point is, would they move to that sort of model, Ezzy, or will they stick with what they've kind of had for the last few years? So to me right now, it seems likely that the Jets will. The other thing I should probably mention, boys, is I really think they want to see what they've got in Rasmus Kupari. It just seems to be like they're trying to make fetch a thing. And so to me, it's like, can they make Rasmus Kupari either the fourth line center or something? And I think they're trying to figure out, if they give him that sort of kind of runway, what he can do for them at the NHL level. So that to me seems to be the overall takeaway for just looking at it, as he would say, from the macro point of view. But I think that right now they think that they really want to give these guys an opportunity to play together. And we know, look, they had success, right, as with with Ehlers and Perfetti and Nemesnikov. So we'll see if that's their inclination. But that seems to be the way it's going right now. And that would be my kind of takeaway, is that right now they're trying to stick with kind of what they were successful with last year, with, of course, some modifications. The power play looked better. The penalty kill looks better. So that would be, of course, the areas of change. But I think from a 5-on-5 perspective, it seems fairly similar.
Well, Ezzy, let me ask you this. So, Kevin Cheveldayoff spoke about the opportunity for young players this offseason, and that's sort of been a theme. But yet it's looking more and more likely that the 12 forwards that are going to start the season for the Winnipeg Jets, and just focusing on the forwards for right now in this conversation, are veteran guys who've been with the Jets for the last couple of years. There's no real influx of that new blood. Not to say that it won't happen and it won't come, but right now, if you were a betting man, with play now, of course, you would say that the forward group for the Winnipeg Jets is going to be very similar to how it was at the start of last year. So how does that square with the comments from Kevin Cheveldayoff?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, Drew. And I think, Dave's talking about, he's romanticizing a Brad Lambert and Nikita Chibrikov third line. I think what we've seen in this training camp is that's a year away, I think. Right. Mm-hmm. We know that Lambert and Chibrikov, look, guys, it ultimately comes down to the amount of forwards that the Jets have that are on one-way contracts, right? It's just they're NHL contracts, one-way contracts, whatever you want to call it. Like a guy like Alex Iafallo, I mean, like, he's in your top 13 forwards. A guy like Morgan Barron, we talked about it, like, he's locked in there. So really, when we were talking about this a couple weeks back at Hockey for All Center, it's like, if Brad Lambert is going to crack your top 13 forwards, somebody's got to come out. And Dave mentions a guy like Rasmus Kupari, who really was killed in the faceoff circle yesterday. I mean, the Jets were as a whole, but Kupari was like 26%. Lowry was 27%. Kupari, we should mention, picked up an assist, a nice little assist on Colin Miller's second goal against the Flames. But I still see Kupari as a 13th forward. You guys might disagree, but I think Kupari is going to play in the NHL this year, but I like David Gustafson, and I think he's won that job as the fourth line center with Alex Iafallo and Morgan Barron. And I think that fourth line is really good. But I think right now, look, if you look at Brad Lambert's expected goals and everything like that in the preseason, he had a positive expected goals for. Like, Lambert scored some goals in the preseason. Like, I don't know if Lambert is making the 22-man roster. I would have no problem with that. But I really think it ultimately comes down to, you've obviously got your top line, Connor Scheifele, Velarde, and, we can get into that because obviously, we know that line is going to have a big offensive year. They just need to be better defensively. And it seems like we talk about that every year with Connor and Scheifele. Yeah, hopefully them on the PK helps a little bit. And obviously the PK went 5 for 5 yesterday, right, boys? But I mean, and then Nemesnikov, Perfetti, Ehlers is your second line. So going back to what Dave said, the third line of Nino Niederreiter, Adam Lowry, and Mason Appleton. Look, Nino Niederreiter has 3 goals in his last had 3 goals in his last 2 preseason games. Like, Niederreiter is on that third line. Lowry's on that third line. Could you move Appleton from a third line role to a fourth line role? Yes, but really what it ultimately comes down to, guys, is...
Hang on, let me just interrupt you for a second there, Ezzy, because I know why you numbered them 1, 2, 3 the way you did, because logically that's sort of, that's how it makes sense. But the usage last year was far more that the Lowry line was actually the second line for the Jets. They were usually the second line over the boards. Maybe is that something to keep an eye on early in the year, that maybe instead of that line being second over the boards, maybe they are a third line in terms of time on ice usage, and that Ehlers, Perfetti, Nemesnikov, assuming that's the line, actually gets that bump up in ice time. Because really, I mean, Mason Appleton played more time 5-on-5, per game than Nikolai Ehlers did last year.
That just can't happen. And it just can't. I mean, Ehlers is arguably your most skilled forward. I mean, it's Scheifele, Connor, Ehlers who we're talking about in the conversation. Maybe you throw Velarde, but I mean, Velarde's younger, but we know, like, we don't have to go over this. I mean, Ehlers 5-on-5, his expected goals and his impact, it's been well documented. It's everybody knows the numbers are out there. We don't have to go over that. But I think that's where I start to have a little bit of concerns. Nemesnikov, I think, is a really talented forward who can play center or wing, but I think he's much better suited for a fourth line role. And that's why I was always a proponent of Lambert centering that second line, because of the more of an offensive punch and speed you get from that. But obviously, it's a tough position to put Lambert in. He's only 20 years old. We talked to Jake Stoller about this last week. Like, you got to remind yourself, Brad Lambert is not 25 years old. He's 20 years old. He was just drafted 2 years ago. So if he goes down to the Manitoba Moose and it's a Kyle Connor type of situation where he plays 5, 10 games, 15 games, whatever it is, and then gets called up, that could be a possibility. But I think that I'm not as worried about Ehlers and Perfetti, because I think, we'll get into Perfetti in a bit, but I think Perfetti is primed for a breakout season, whether that's 60 points, 65 points, whatever. And I think Ehlers is going to have but Nemesnikov, I think that's when I have concerns, because Nemesnikov, even though he's a very talented defensive forward and, he's able to cover the ice well and everything like that, I mean, there's a reason why the Jets went out and they acquired Sean Monahan before the trade deadline. It's because Nemesnikov, he's limited his ceiling. We know what his ceiling is. He's a 35 to 40 point guy, and I think you want more than that out of a second line center.
Do those breakouts happen, though, Dave? The ones that Ezzy was just talking about from Perfetti and Ehlers, do those breakouts happen if they don't see a legitimate bump in their 5-on-5 ice time?
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that's the whole point. I think that you're absolutely right. The key to this team's success, for a number of reasons, is you need a top 9 who can score. And sure, you had success last year, and then you got trounced in the playoffs. So you can point to last year and say, well, look what we did, but then you can also say, but look what we did. And so you have to make some changes. You have to be able to figure out how you can make this team a better team. And for right now, the way they're doing it, you need to get Nikolai Ehlers to get on the ice more, right? And they're, look, he's going to get more ice time now. His ice time will be more significant because he's going to be on PP1, and it looks a lot more dynamic with him on there, especially in that bumper position, or I think they're calling it the pop position or whatever Scott Arneal said the other day.
It's crazy to think, sorry, Dave, that Ehlers only had 1 power play goal all year last year.
Well, it's wild. And I suspect, again, the Jets knew that they just can't have a repeat of last year because their power play and penalty kill were so ineffective. And as we talked about, bottom third of the league for the entirety of the season, especially at the start when they were like the 30th position or whatever it was, Drew. But look, this is a team that you need to become reliant on that second line. If right now, Vlad Nemesnikov, Nikolai Ehlers, and Cole Perfetti are going to be your second line, then you have to use them accordingly. Because the Adam Lowry line, while they did, put up some numbers, you can't use them in that capacity. They really are, they're your shutdown line. And that's what they should do, right? If you need them to shut the top line of the opposition, that's what they're on the ice for. And to me, you need that second line to get mid, and it's like a second line. You're right, Drew. For them, and we all knew it, everybody knows it in the chat, for when you look at the ice time, The second line was Adam Lowry's line. The third line was the Nemestikov / Monahan line. So that to me is one of those things that needs to change it, because again, at the end of the day in the playoffs, you need those guys to score. You need the second line to be a reliable second line. And so if you don't trust them enough in the regular season, how are you going to trust them more in the playoffs?
Well, you're clearly not. I mean, I go back to, I understand why the Jets are reticent to overhaul what had been a damn good regular season team last year. And for all the slings and arrows you want to throw at them, and I understand that, the playoff performance, everything else, this was still a very good regular season team. And they're projected, by the way, by those folks who do, the numbers-based analytics, who like to project out how the season's going to go. They are projected to still be a very good team. I do think, though, there needs to be a bit of a philosophy change in how they deploy some of their players. And I'm hopeful that we're going to see that, because they've talked a big game sort of about that. They've talked a good game about how, the Ehlers and the Perfetti need that additional ice time. But I can't help but be skeptical until I see it in action. I mean, Mason Appleton, he's a fine player. He's a useful player on most every NHL team.
Coming off of a career year, by the way.
Coming off a career year, he had his absolute, I have no disrespect to him whatsoever. He had a significant impact on the Jets last season, and it was a positive impact. But he can't be playing that many minutes 5-on-5. It's just not going to be, I think, a recipe for success this year. Even though it was last year, I think this year I don't expect that's going to continue. I think that's hindering the Winnipeg Jets' performance, because him on the ice for that long, and not trying to single him out, but him and that some of his line mates on the ice for that long at the detriment to other more talented players is going to be a negative impact on the Winnipeg Jets, Ezzy.
Absolutely. And I want to bring up this stat again, because we talked about this last week with Jacob Stoller, but Connor Scheifele and Velarde together in 200 5-on-5 minutes earned only 38% of the expected goal share. So that's your top line of Connor Scheifele, Velarde. So we're going to be talking about this all year long. The easy swap is Ehlers and Connor. And then you've got Connor, Nemesnikov, and Perfetti. And we know in limited minutes, Connor and Perfetti have been very good together, regardless of who's in the middle, whether it's Nemesnikov or it was Sean Monahan, I believe, guys. If you remember towards the end of last season, you saw that very briefly where you saw Connor, Monahan, and Perfetti. So that's the easy switch, because what you're doing is you're adding a play driver and you're adding a responsible defensive forward in Ehlers to that top line, like we've said, arguably the most skilled player on your team, and you're making that top line even more dangerous. I think Connor Scheifele and Velarde are going to score a lot of goals this year, but I think it's the defensive part of the game that's going to be the key there, because I think the Jets are going to be a fine defensive team because they happen to have Connor Hellebuck in net.
That helps.
But you've also got, some question marks on the third pair with Hayden Fleury and Colin Miller. This is Dylan Sandberg's first year as a second pairing defenseman. I think Sandberg's going to be fine, but all I'm saying is I think right now, even though the Jets are running it back with the same forward lines, it's going to be interesting to see, based on the results early in the season, if they make any switches. And based on the results, we see Scott O'Neill, for example, stick with or move Ehlers up with Scheifele and Velarde, or maybe we see a more talented player. But I want to say one more thing. Yeah. If Brad Lambert doesn't make this team, I think it's only a matter of time before he's playing in the NHL. And if Lambert makes the team, that probably means a guy like Rasmus Kupari is going to have to go on waivers.
That is, and of course, injuries also have been a factor throughout training camp so far. And you'd never want to wish an injury, but you never know. Remember, that's what gave Kyle Connor his opportunity to move up from the AHL to the NHL level, is when Matthew Perreault suffered that injury all those many years ago. Time will tell. Wednesday night, that's the first game of the season. We're going to be at Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue for a watch party on Wednesday night, and then a live on location broadcast of the Illegal Curve post-game show. But in conjunction with our friends at Play Now, we want you to go to the home opener on next Friday, the Jets and the Chicago Blackhawks. See if I can make this any bigger. I'm not sure if it's totally working or not, but Yeah. Anyways, you go to our Instagram page, you go to our Facebook page, you can't miss it. It's pinned right at the top. All you have to do is answer the following trivia question. True or false, Play Now is a local legal online gambling site. I think you know the answer. The answer is true. I'm going to give you the spoiler alert. And then you enter the contest. And you have until Monday at 9 a.m. to enter. We're going to draw some people. We're going to draw 4 tickets, 4 great seats, lower bowl seats for Friday's home opener for the Jets and the Chicago Blackhawks. So there you go. Courtesy of our friends at Play Now, we want to send you to the home opener next Friday, 6 days from now. The Jets and the Blackhawks. Go to our Instagram page at Illegal Curve. Go to our Facebook page at Illegal Curve. Look at the post. The details are straightforward. You'll be able to figure out how to do it. And maybe we're going to draw your name. And maybe you'll be off to the home opener next Friday between the Jets and the Chicago Blackhawks.
And Drew, there's dinner with Illegal Curve prior to that, right?
I'm not sure about that part. As if there is, then that's news to me. But, we want these people to enter the contest. We don't want to scare them away. They might not be interested in having dinner with us. That's the only difference on that front.
Ooh, $10.
Yeah, thank you. There you go, Stan. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all it takes. Again, if you give us money, we're going to put your comment on the board there. That's how this show works.
He makes a valid point, which is, and let's just read it for the people on the podcast. It's hard to argue when there are only 3 teams with better records, though I guess there's no guarantee it will be the same this year, though. And, again, I suspect that's what the Jets are suggesting, right? They're going to be able to, with largely the same lineup, be able to run things back and hope for our different success with, maybe look, they could be the top team if their PK and PP were better last year. That's what we talked about. I would think it was last week or the week before, boys. So we will see how the Jets can run with this lineup. But
so how do I get my $3.33 here, guys? I have to go buy milk from 7-Eleven
and an apple.
We know that buying milk at 7-Eleven has historically been a bit of an adventure there, Mr. Ginsburg. When we come back, Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press joins us for more Jets talk. It's a Saturday morning. Don't go anywhere. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by our friends at Play Now, live on our YouTube channel.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in 2 unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumor's incredible promotions and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
25 minutes before the top of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning. We're thrilled to welcome back to the program. Joining us from what I'm hoping is not a moving automobile, Mike McIntyre. Joining us, Mike, of course, with the Winnipeg Free Press. Mike, good morning. How are you?
It is stationary, parked in the driveway. Don't worry about it, fellas. No laws being broken here.
That's good.
I'm doing well, thanks. It's windy out.
It is. Yeah, hold on tight. Hold on to your hat. It's breezy.
Bad day for those who wear toupees. Fortunately, I've still got the real deal, but
hey, you don't need to rub it in.
Mike, I don't know about your neck of the woods, but here in River Heights, like there's like tree branches everywhere. Like a big tree branch fell in my backyard, and like Dave's house here, there's a big branch. Like the winds have been nuts for the last 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, I know some Jets fans wish the winds of change would be blowing a little harder when it comes to the hockey team.
See, I teed you up there, Mike.
You did indeed. Yeah, my goodness. When that lineup for yesterday's final preseason game went out, Twitter, can we still call it Twitter? I hate calling it X. Twitter lost its collective mind over some of the lineup decisions, and not surprising. Hey, it's a passionate fan base. We love the passion. They're fueled by passion. And I don't imagine last night's 3-2 victory over the Flames will do much to ease the concerns that a lot of fans seem to have when it comes to who's in and who likely is out.
Well, let's talk about that, because I asked Dave and Ezzy about that in the first segment, Mike. And all off season, Kevin Cheveldayoff and some of the other Jets management and coaching staff, the mantra was, young players have the opportunity. Young players all will be able to step up. And then it looks like the roster, at least the forward group, is going to be basically the same as it was at the start of last year. So how do you sort of square those two comments together and sort of say that the team is on the same page with the mexaging?
Well, if we could go back in time, I wonder if Kevin Cheveldayoff would have preferred to have said, if I'm Ville Heinola, it's an exciting time. Because look, if he hadn't got re-injured, he's on this team, and I wonder how much that would have alleviated maybe some of the backlash that's coming. Like if Ville Heinola next Wednesday in Edmonton is on the third pair where he would have been, I mean, I'm pretty confident in saying Heinola Miller was likely going to be that third pairing, and I think will be once he gets back. But the fact that he's now on the injured list, I think that, and then add in maybe some of the other concerns when it comes to Lambert and Chibrikov, and it's a bit of a pile on. But I do think that Heinola's injury has maybe changed the way some folks are assessing the camp. And that's not the Jets putting Ville on the sidelines. That was just an unfortunate set of circumstances. So let's be clear. He's going to be on this roster. And as soon as he's healthy, he will be on this roster. This isn't going to be last year playing itself out again, where he gets hurt and then there's just no room at the inn for him. One big factor, guys, is his waiver status. And he needs waivers. And he would not clear waivers should they try to send him down. Mm-hmm. Now, like it or not, I think waivers is a bit of a story here. And when it comes to some of these other decisions that are probably going to be made this weekend, and the easiest thing to do is to send Salamonson, Lambert, and Chibrikov all to the Moose. They would only then, by my calculation, have to expose one of their backup goaltenders to waivers, and that's it. The guys that cleared yesterday, they're with the Moose now, and the Jets keep all their depth, again, barring whatever happens with Eric Comrie or Kaapo Kähkönen. But I do think that's factoring in a little bit here. I also think, Hayden Fleury, they feel he deserves a look, so he's stepping in on that third pair right now. Same with Dylan Coghlan. That's not to say that they view Fleury and Coghlan long term as more than Elias Salomonsson. But guys, what value would there be if Salomonsson is on this team, but he's not playing regularly? He's part of a rotation for the next few weeks as a 6, 7, maybe 8 guy. This is his first season in North America. They probably want him to go down and get some heavy minutes with the Moose. So I'm not saying he's for sure going down. It's certainly by the fact he didn't play last night, and I think we can read the tea leaves, who was in, who was out. There's a good chance that the guys that didn't play last night, save for probably Jared Anderson-Dolan and David Gustafson, who are both nursing minor injuries, you could probably take those 18 skaters that were in the lineup last night and then add Anderson-Dolan, Gustafson, and Coghlan, and that's probably your starting 23, along with Hellebuck and either Comrie or Kähkönen.
So, Mike, I've got today's free press in my hands here because I'm obviously a big supporter of local journalism. And even though I have a Jets question for you,
yes,
I really want to ask you about how you've predicted my New Jersey Devils going to the Stanley Cup final with the Oilers beating them. I'm going to leave that for later in the show, Mike, because you know how much I love that pick. And obviously, Johnny Kovacevic agrees with you with his goal and an assist in Prague, right? But no, I wanted to ask you, you touched on Elias Salomonsson, you touched on Brad Lambert. Obviously, there's a good chance that those guys are going to go down to the American Hockey League. I think you'd agree Nikita Chibrikov is probably the least uncertain, even though I think you'd agree Chibrikov has been really impressive in training camp and preseason. It seems like he was a bigger long shot to make the Jets top 13 or top 14 than Brad Lambert. But in your opinion, like how if Lambert does go down to the Moose, is it just a question of when there's an injury and he's going to be called up? Like, because to me, it seems like he did everything to make this team. Like, he was really good in the exhibition games. He's been really impressive in training camp. Everybody's raving about his speed and skill. Like, what is it just a question of the Jets have so many NHL players on NHL contracts that it's just going to be tough for Lambert to crack this roster?
Yeah, I do think it's just a matter of when, not if, that he gets a look. Like, I'm confident, guys, in saying Brad Lambert will play some NHL games this season with the Jets. It's probably not going to be game 1 in Edmonton, but it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And whether it's injuries or performance related, like I'll say this, I mean, I think there's a potential spot on the second line for him should Vlad Nemestikov either struggle a little bit in that second line center role, and he had a nightmare of a night. Actually, everybody did last night in the faceoff circle. The Jets were abysmal. I'm not saying Brad Lambert would be any better, but he probably couldn't have been any worse last night when it comes to faceoff. But there's a lot more to the job than just winning faceoffs, of course. I actually thought the Nemestikov, Ehlers, Perfetti line looked quite a bit better last night. I thought they really struggled on Wednesday in the home game against Calgary. But, I'm not saying Vlad Nemestikov's on a short leash at the second line center, but I also think Vlad Nemestikov can do a lot of things in this lineup, and you could potentially move him down, and he's that versatile, right? And you have a guy in Lambert that could probably, at least for a look in the regular season, slot in there. So I do think it's just a matter of time. As for Chibrikov, I would agree, as he's been, to me, if I was ranking those two forwards, like Lambert and Chibrikov, he's probably been the bigger revelation, maybe because slightly less was expected out of him. I've just loved, there's a fearlessness to his game. Mm-hmm. I think we've seen that he can play different type of roles. There's more utility there. Like, he could play as a checker in your bottom 6, but he could also play in a top 6 role if needed. And that's a pretty valuable tool. And I think as the games and the competition have stepped up a little bit, like, I think the last 2 games prior to last night, not to say they exposed Brad Lambert, but I think it did show that there's still some work to be done when it comes to the overall game. But I don't think this is a case where the Jets are just going to let him languish all year in the American Hockey League. It's inevitable to me that at some point this season, maybe very early in the season, they're going to need to dip into the farm. And I would think Brad Lambert, assuming he goes down in the next day or two, he's probably going to be very close to the first man up.
Mike McIntyre is our guest Saturday morning. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, brought to you by our friends at Play Now. Learn to bet with Play Now, the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Sign up and get up to $250 in bonus bets. Conditions apply. 18 plus. Please enjoy responsibly.
Well, the player I know, Mike, I'm going to ask Mike about it. I know he's got a bet on, but I'm not going to reveal that bet, of course, because that's it. There's a confidentiality until we see whether it comes to fruition.
Hang on. Before you ask your question, Dave, I need to tell Mike a PSA for future. Nobody keeps receipts like Dave Minuk does. In all walks of his life, the man is a walking threat to everybody he comes in contact with.
What's he got on you, Drew? What does he have on you?
I can't say it on air, but it's horrible.
Revealing
Photos,
pictures.
Videos. It doesn't matter. The man is a menace to society, and he needs to be stopped.
Well, in this instance, actually, Mike promoted it because we were sitting in the press box, and he called over to me 2 seats over, and he said, "Dave, I've got something for you." And then, of course, then I whipped out the phone, started recording. We needed a witness, so I was that witness.
I think I know where this is going. I like it.
But Mike, the question I had about, and it's funny because you're in your first answer, I didn't want to interrupt, but I was thinking because you talked about Heinola and Colin Miller as a pairing. I'm like, well, of course you like that pairing because you already came up with a nickname for that pairing. But that to me is the question in terms of Colin Miller.
Yes.
Millie Vanilla. Now, neither of those guys would be old enough to understand the reference.
Yeah,
but regardless. No, but from what you've seen from Colin Miller, are you a little surprised now that what we're seeing from him now, he wasn't used more last year? He was used so sparingly because he really seems to be a good fit in this Jets lineup.
Yeah, he sure does. And yes, I am surprised. I mean, Rick Bowness probably was a bit stubborn when it came to maybe not including him more often. And I think, what did Miller appear in 5 total games, like from the trade deadline on last year? This is a guy that when they acquired him, he had the hardest recorded shot in any NHL regular season game last year, came with the New Jersey Devils. The Jets, like Josh Morrissey, his shot has absolutely improved for sure. The Jets have lacked, though, that big booming blast from the blue line. How's that for alliteration, boys?
Since Bufflin, more alliteration.
Right, since Bufflin, exactly. Since Big Buff.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying Colin Miller is the reincarnation of Dustin Bufflin, obviously not, but he does have that weapon in his arsenal, and we've now seen it on display. I mean, not just the 3 goals he scored in the preseason. There's been a lot of other like big blasts as well, and it's something that opponents have to be aware of. They have to respect, and whether it means a defender has to slide a little higher to the point to cover, and it opens something up down low. Like, I just think there's a lot of things that can be done with it. Colin Miller. Who had Colin Miller leading the Jets in preseason scoring with 3 goals and 2 assists, 5 points? I don't think anyone had that on the bingo card, but there you are. And yeah, I mean, this is a guy who didn't get the opportunity last year after coming over. To his credit and the organization's credit, guys, and I'd love to know what the discussions were like when they signed him in free agency. You would think that would have been a tough sell, right? The team that traded for you but really didn't use you, saying, hey, want to come back to us? Like, want more of that? But I do believe that Scott Arniel conveyed to Colin Miller that there would be an opportunity kind of under his watch that wasn't afforded him under Rick Bowness. And I do wonder, guys, I mean, Scott Arniel was in charge of the defenseman last year. Like, I wonder if Arniel was almost overruled. Like if he wanted to see Miller more last season and just, the buck stopped with bonus, more alliteration. And he had his lineup and wanted to do what he did. But yeah, I mean, let's go back to game 5 of the playoffs last year when Colin Miller finally got in. He might have been the best player on the ice that night. And, I think part of that game might have actually propelled everyone to say, hey, maybe we need to see more of this. So, yeah, I mean, it's been, you look at the right side for sure. And basically he's replacing Nate Schmidt. And I dare say it's off to a really good start, and it'll be exciting to see what he can do, when the games start to count. But certainly that shot, he skates well enough. He's mobile enough. He's not the fastest guy, of course, not the most physical, but I think he does everything good enough. But the shot is obviously the big takeaway, and it gives the Jets kind of something they haven't had in a number of years. And that's a good thing.
Mike McIntyre, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Mike, you, in your predictions in the Winnipeg Free Press, as he mentioned that you have the Devils going to the Cup final, and you have the Jets still making the playoffs, but as a wild card team. And I totally understand where you're coming from that. It seems like Dallas and Colorado and Nashville, with the additions they made this offseason, seem to be on paper, I would agree, a step ahead of the Winnipeg Jets. What needs to happen for the Jets to sort of make up that gap between where you predict that they're going to finish in the wild card spot and maybe the top 3 teams in that central division? Is it, simply a continued focus on defensive responsibility? Is it an improved special teams? How do the Jets sort of get back into the top 3 of the central division conversation?
Well, you just nailed it with your last point. To me, it's all about special teams. This is a Jets team that, tied for 4th in the regular season in the NHL last year, on the strength of elite goaltending, certainly very solid defensive play overall, some timely scoring, a lot of depth scoring. This is a team, don't forget, guys, 11 of the 12 forwards hit double digits. Josh Morrissey did as well. When you have a dozen guys, and then that's before they added Toffoli and Monahan. But they did that all last year in spite of a power play and a penalty kill that was in the bottom third of the league. I think that if they can get both of those specialties kind of up into the upper tier as opposed to the lower tier, like I'm talking top 10, top 12, obviously they'd be aiming even higher than that. But if the power play and the penalty kill can be among the better units in the league, that can mask all kinds of other things that potentially happen. And I think that would be a key to keeping the Jets elite. The funny thing about the Jets, guys, like you never want to put the cart before the horse, and before you've even played a single regular season game, already be talking about the playoffs. I just get the sense with this team, it's no longer just about trying to get into the playoffs or sneak into the playoffs, which kind of was the goal for a long time around here, right? This is a team I think that expects to be in the playoffs. I expect them to be in the playoffs. And to me, that's where the ultimate story is going to be written, on the 24-25 Winnipeg Jets. It's a story we can't even begin to write for about 6 or 7 months from now. But to me, that's where it is. And, people have said, well, what do they need to do to take another step in the playoffs? Well, they have to bring kind of the regular season game that they seem to have done fairly well, certainly for big parts of the last 2 regular seasons, into the playoffs. But that's a debate and a discussion for another day. I think the Jets have enough talent, enough depth. They certainly have an elite goaltender, and Connor Hellebuck, guys, I know it's not how you start, but how you finish. His end to his preseason looked a hell of a lot better than the start. He was really, and that third period last night when what were the shots, 21-4.
Yep.
I know 2 got by him. They were both really nice tips, so you can't fault him for that. But my goodness, was he locked in, and the Jets will hope that Connor Hellebuck can just kind of hit the ground running starting next week. But yeah, I think the Jets are going to be right there in the mix. Picking them as a wild card team, to me, it's as much about what I think are improving. Like, I think Dallas is the class of the Central. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nashville is going to be a lot better. And they were a team, if they can now combine the added talent with the work ethic that team has to kind of get the most out of what they always have. And then I think Colorado is Colorado, right? And there's question marks for sure what's going to happen, with a couple of their injured guys. Goaltending is always a bit of a question mark. But I just think the Jets will be in the top 3 mix. I had them as the first wild card. And, if I had to lay out points, I'd say they probably would just miss being in the top 3. Like, I'm talking a point or two. So I think the Jets will be just fine. But we'll see if they can take some of the painful lessons from their hasty playoff exit last spring and channel them into the way they play during the regular season. And for sure, special teams is going to be a big focus with this group. 2 new assistant coaches running each discipline. And I'd say the early returns, at least in the preseason, are encouraging.
I agree with you, Mike. And I think the way I view the Central is like there's a clear top 4 and a bottom 4, right? Like I see the Jets, Avalanche, Stars, and Predators as the top 4. And I could really see, any combination of 1 through 4. Like I could see the Jets finishing as high. I don't know if they win the division, but I could see them finishing as high as 2nd behind Dallas. I could also see them finishing 4th. I could see Nashville winning the division. I think I'm maybe a little bit higher on them than some people are, but like I could easily see the Predators being a 110-point team with Stamkos and Marchessault and Brady Shea, right? And then you throw in Utah, who you and Kenny wrote about in today's Free Press, and Utah is going to be better just based on the acquisitions they made. So I think it's going to be really tight. And you're right. I mean, it's hard to start talking about the playoffs when the regular season hasn't even started. But I mean, I think the whole team's got to play better because a lot of people focus on Connor Hellebuck's numbers. But anybody watching that Jets Avalanche series last year, I mean, I don't think it would have mattered if there were 2 Hellebucks in net the way McKinnon, Makar, and Nichushkin were playing, right? Throwing Rantanen. But I wanted to ask you about Gabe Vilardi because your colleague Kenny Weeb on Winnipeg Sports Talk, he's saying that if Vilardi plays 75 plus games, he's predicting a 40-goal, 75-point season, which, I don't, Kenny knows what he's talking about. You know that. And so I'm not going to disagree with Kenny, but I guess what is your biggest, expectation, or what do you think of that? Because Vilardi in his 40 or 45 games he played last year was excellent, especially on the power. 47 games, 36 points. But Vilardi seems to be not only a big key of that top line. We know we're going to get out of Scheifele and Connor, but also that power play, because the power play really sagged when Vilardi was out of the lineup.
Yeah, and when he kind of got back and kind of hit his stride later in the second half, the power play looked entirely different. It really did. And it kind of ran through him. Right now, we're seeing a bit of a different look this season where it's not just running through Gabe Vilardi. Basically, all 5 guys on the ice are capable of kind of almost quarterbacking it depending on what's available to them. But I mean, Gabe Vilardi at one point last year was kind of scoring at a 40-goal clip, should he have been healthy and in the lineup. And, given that he's still a relatively young player, there's a lot of upside there. No doubt there's plenty of motivation. We've heard it in chatting with him. Like, he's tired of kind of being labeled as the guy that always seems to be battling injuries. Now, you can't will yourself to stay healthy, I don't think. Like, everybody wants to stay healthy. Not everybody can, but you kind of feel like the universe maybe owes him some good fortune on the injury front. In fact, there's a few guys you could say that about, including one young defenseman that we talked about earlier today. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that's out of the question for sure, given how many puck touches he's going to get, how he plays the game, that net front presence. I think that's not out of the question at all. I'm not sure I would put my mortgage on it, guys, but I think he's got it in him for sure to be that kind of player, especially, if he's going to be stapled on that top line with Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. We know that those guys attract a lot of attention as well. And I think we've seen down low, like Gabe Vilardi, he's not afraid to stand in front of that net. He's got great hands. He's got great instincts, whether to either distribute the puck or take it himself and try and score. So, yeah, there's a lot to like about the player for sure. And, I think the Jets would love to see that happen. It would cost them dearly when it comes time to his next contract. But I suspect that's a price Kevin Cheveldayoff and company would be very willing to pay, given the trade tree, if you will, as we go all the way back to Patty Line. Like, they'd love to see Gabe Vilardi absolutely hit and obviously sign long term, and we can kind of let that trade tree kind of just settle for a while.
And Mike, it's not the sexiest of topics, but backup goaltender. Where do you see that playing out? Eric Comrie got the last couple of backup roles as for the last 2 preseason games. How do you see that situation playing out?
This is one of those guys where it's not really fair to either guy in the battle, like to really judge the preseason work, because what did they get? Like Kakinen, what did he play?
Comrie only got one start.
Right. And Kakinen got 2.
Right.
I think that right there tells you everything you need to know. And Kakinen's last start was pretty good. To me, I mean, I think there's been evaluation obviously going on in practice. And Wade Flaherty, I mean, Scott Arniel is quick to almost distance himself from that. Like, hey, that's not my, like, and I think that's true. I think he has very little say. Like, Wade Flaherty will probably be telling him who the backup is. The backup goaltender in Winnipeg, guys, is a little like, and I don't know if anyone out there remembers the Maytag repairman. Yeah. Those old commercials. Like, that's what that is. You just sit for long periods of time, and there's not a lot to do, right? Because the product runs so well, and the product in this case is Connor Hellebuck. I think it's Kaapo Kakinen all the way. I'll be stunned if it's not Eric Comrie on waivers. I think they're intrigued. They know what they have in Comrie for sure. They also know Eric Comrie is just the ultimate teammate. You guys all know it. Dave, you've talked to him more than anybody. Like, he's just the ultimate team guy. I'm sure there would be disappointment, but he would never, ever let that. And I'm not saying Kaapo Kakinen would, but I just think Eric Comrie, he'll just, whatever the decision is, if he ends up with the Moose, if he gets through waivers, like, he'll go down. He'll be the ultimate pro. He'll be a fantastic mentor to Thomas Milic. He'll be the perfect teammate. And that when he gets in games, you've got a terrific AHL level goaltender. And I think they're intrigued by what Kakinen is maybe capable of. This is a guy that, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, Kakinen didn't he win like the AHL rookie goalie of the year?
Yeah. The Wild, I think.
Iowa?
Yeah. Iowa. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's been on a couple, like, he was on San Jose. Like, you can disregard his numbers last year. He was on the worst team in the league last year. But we know the couple times we've seen Kakinen play against the Jets, like, he looks like the second coming of Ken Dryden or whatever. Like, he can lights out. But again, it's going to be a role where he's not going to play a lot. And you look at the Jets schedule kind of early here. Like, I don't even know when the backup gets his first game.
Yeah, go back-to-backs for a while.
Right. So to me, it's Kakinen, and it's not based on anything Comrie or Kakinen did or didn't do in the limited preseason action. I just think this is one of those guys where it was probably the decision was kind of made even before camp really started, and it's played out the way I think everyone expected it would.
If it's Kakinen, and I expect it would be, you wonder maybe he gets, just so he doesn't sit for a month straight, you wonder if he gets that San Jose at Winnipeg game.
That's the game I was going to mention.
On Friday, October the 18th, a revenge
Kakinen
game.
revenge game.
Yeah.
Kakinen's revenge. That sounds like something you pick up while on a on a trip or something.
Next to Montezuma's revenge, I
right,
think,
exactly.
when you go down south.
Drew got Kakinen's revenge in Europe once.
That could absolutely be a spot, because, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, they play the 18th against San Jose, and then isn't the next game on the Sunday? It's an afternoon game, right?
Against
Correct.
Pittsburgh. That's right. That's the Brian Little
Right.
one-day contract game.
So, yeah, I mean, that would make sense because although the only thing is that Friday game is after a long layoff, right?
It would be a week between games for Hellebuck. The game before the Friday game is Sunday, October 13th. So he'd go the 13th through the 20th without getting any game action.
Well, and Mike, that Pittsburgh game is another revenge game. We got Rutger coming to town.
Rutger scored his first goal last night in the preseason and had a couple helpers too. I see. It's on a interesting line, guys, with Jesse Puljujarvi, who's had a terrific preseason, and Lars Eller. There was some talk that Rutger wasn't necessarily going to stick out of camp, that he might have to go down to the A, but I think seems like he's maybe played himself back into the conversation. But
sorry, Mike, can you imagine after all of that, if he goes down and plays with Wilkes-Barre?
It would be a pretty incredible development for sure. Penguins have a lot of they still have a lot of decisions to make. They've got a lot of players still in their camp, so it'll be interesting to see in the next day or two what happens there. But yeah, I mean, I just think the backup goalie, like, they don't need, whether it's Kakinen or Comrie. I think it's almost unfair to expect you're going to get Laurent Brossoit type numbers. Like, Brossoit was brilliant last year, but the Jets just need whoever the backup is, like, just come in, win 60% of your starts, 50%, go 500 and
20 games. They need 20 games out of their backup, right?
Right. And, 10-10 or 12-8, like, that'll be just fine because Connor Hellebuck's going to do the heavy lifting. We all know that.
Mike McIntyre with the Winnipeg Free Press. Apparently the neighbors are getting worried that you've been talking to yourself in the car for the last 30 minutes. So we'll let you get out. Keep the neighbors calm. Thanks for this. We'll see you at
It's because Mike is now a Devils fan. He has to hide in his car. That's
so just quickly on that, Ezzy, it's just the power of Johnny Kovacevic. I had the game on yesterday as I'm writing my piece. Maybe it's the ultimate recency bias, right? Because like Johnny Kovacevic is on pace for an 82-goal, 82-assist season. 164 points, would shatter the all-time scoring record for defensemen in the NHL. You know what? And Jacob Markstrom already has made the save of the year.
Incredible.
And we're one game in. So I was impressed by what I saw. I thought I had the Devils really high last year too. They disappointed me, and I guess everybody who I don't cheer for them like you do, Ezzy, but I thought they would be better than they were. I just think this year they're young. Their kids are going to be a little bit, more mature, older. I love the Markstrom addition. I love the Brendan Dillon addition. I think he's going to bring, some grit on that back end.
And Brett Pesce. Pesce is huge.
Yes. So and even Paul Cotter, who looked really good. Like, he was an underutilized guy in Vegas. I just like the moves they made. That division's also going to be very tough. But yeah, I like the Devils. And I think the Oilers, they've just got too much talent. We'll get a look at them, of course, up close next week. I'll be in Edmonton for the season opener. Looking forward to that, guys.
There you go. Mike, we can look forward to your work in the broadsheet of the Winnipeg Free Press. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Have a great rest of the weekend. We'll catch up again soon.
You bet, guys. Take care.
Take care. There he goes, Mike McIntyre, joining us this morning from the automobile as he breaks down the Winnipeg Jets season with us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Do you think Mike's wife was just like, "You're doing Illegal Curve again? Get out there, go to the car. You can't do it in here."
Banished out of the house.
Like, Mike can do Winnipeg sports talk in the house, but Illegal Curve, he has to go to the car.
No, he's done our show from the basement, though.
That's true. It's amazing that where people are willing to join us from is where it really breaks down.
Well, when Marty Biron once pulled over in somewhere in upstate New York
and stole Wi-Fi
because he didn't have any Wi-Fi, so he had to go to like some random person's house to get Wi-Fi. So that's what people do to get good Wi-Fi and appear on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
And when we come back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, X factors, determining factors, players, or just general improvement. What's going to be the key for the Winnipeg Jets this upcoming season? Much more to come. Hour number 2 has already started, but we'll start it officially on the other side of the break. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on this Saturday morning.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now, you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. 10 minutes after the top of the hour, Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning. Program brought to you by our friends at Play Now. They're the official title sponsor. Don't bet on illegal sites. Bet with Play Now instead. Manitoba's local, legal, and secure gambling site. 18+. Enjoy responsibly. Remember, head to our Instagram page and our Facebook page. We're giving away, in conjunction with our friends at Play Now, 4 tickets to the home opener this coming Friday, the Jets and the Blackhawks. Head to our social media, Instagram, Facebook pages. The instructions on how to enter for that contest are, of course, right there and readily available.
We already had over 65 people enter. So
there you go. In an hour, in 70 minutes, we've had 65 people enter. What was that noise?
Little cough. Didn't get it.
Sounded like a little bit of a bark, Dave.
I got a little cough right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, you sound a little hoarse there. Somebody at the start of the show, people were comparing you to Selma Bouvier, Marge's sister from the Simpsons. But you've been working hard. So I mean, you sort of need these next sort of 3-4 days to get rid of that little bit of the bugaboo.
Drew, get Dave a fisherman's friend or something.
I was going to say, get him a lozenge, the poor guy, something like that. Again, reminder, Wednesday, we're going to be at Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue, 9 o'clock, Illegal Curve watch party, and then post-game show after the Jets and the Oilers. So put that in your calendars. Diarize that, if you will.
I already ordered you a spaghetti and meatballs, Drew.
Thank you. I appreciate that. They do have a good quality spaghetti and meatballs there, and I'll be glad to do some damage with that. And again, also big congratulations to our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, longtime sponsor of this program, celebrating their 40 year anniversary this weekend with their gala shows. There were 2 shows last night, 2 shows tonight. Very few tickets left for 9:45, 7:15, I believe, completely sold out. Get them at rumorscomedyclub.com. Great to see all the comedians have been coming through and celebrating Rumors for the past 40 years.
Is our main man Kevin Bozeman performing this weekend?
Kevin is there. I was nice. With Kevin last night, and he asked about you, as he said, when are we going bowling next? Because that's true. We did go bowling.
I didn't end up going bowling. I think I was sick, or I couldn't come for some reason. But
Twinkle Toes Ginsburg did not make an appearance.
Yeah, I didn't want to embarrass anybody with how well I can bowl. I'm like John Goodman in Big Lebowski. But no, we took our big thing was we had Kevin Bozeman, I think, in studio at least twice, if not 3 times.
Yeah,
and then that was when Rumors had the comedian staying on Grant, so he was staying on Grant. So before we dropped him off, he wanted to go to McDonald's. So Dave M, Kevin Bozeman, and I went to McDonald's and picked up a little Happy Meal or whatever we got. I think he might have gone with a double quarter pounder with cheese, now that I remember it. But he's hilarious. So yeah, definitely go check him out if you have a chance tonight.
Yeah, Kevin Bozeman, Mark Forward from Letterkenny, Dave Hempstead, Rob Pugh, and who am I missing? Kelly Taylor from the Pride of Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. All 5 are performing at Rumors this weekend. Gentlemen, just a quick programming note. So next week, the show is Sunday, not Saturday. So Sunday morning, 9 a.m. is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday is Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement. Usually it takes more than 1 day for everything that we've done wrong, but we're going to try and boil it down to that 1 day next Saturday. So no show next Saturday, but Sunday morning, 9 a.m., a special Sunday edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So you can stay tuned for that. Put it in your calendar. Next Sunday is when we're going to be on for the program next week. And we're also going to do our so popular over-unders for the 24-25 season on next Sunday's show. So you can mark that all down so you can get ready for that next Sunday starting at 9 a.m. The question I have for you guys right now is, if you had to pick a player or an area for the Winnipeg Jets that you think is the determining factor for success, and don't say Connor Hellebuck because that's an obvious answer. Something a little bit more.
Connor Hellebuck.
Thank you. So I'm now ignoring you for the rest of the segment. I'm going to ask Dave.
No. I got something. If you want to go to me first,
okay, go for it. There you go. I mean, you interrupted me already.
If we're talking about if we're talking about one player or a few players, obviously, I'm not sure why we went to this view now. It kind of threw me off a little bit, Dave. But yeah, what's going on here?
Drew's having fun.
Oh, that was Drew. I thought that was you.
Yeah. No, my answer.
That's what Kenny and Rennie roll. They do the vertical. I like
this better.
Look, I mean, I don't think, I mean, it's hard to pick 1, 2, or 3 players, but we've already talked about some very key positions. Like for me, second line center is an area where I look at and I say, Perfetti, Nemesnikov, and Ehlers, those 3 players together have had good results. So I'm not worried. I don't think those players are going to play poorly together. But I think as the season progresses, as it goes along, are you going to get the requisite amount of offense from that line? Because let's be honest, guys, Nemesnikov is limited offensively. And I go back to the Sean Monahan acquisition, right? That's why the Jets went out there and they bolstered their center depth by getting Monahan, and that moved Nemesnikov down to a bottom pairing role. So that line to me is going to be a key to the Jets' success, because I think Connor Scheifele-Velarde, those guys, I mean, all 3 of those guys have 70-plus point potential. Like Scheifele's going to be a point per game player. Kyle Connor, if he stays healthy, he has a good chance at hitting 50 goals. I think he'll hit 40 goals easily if he remains healthy for the majority of the season. Ehlers, that's the switch that I'm looking for to see, when does Scott Arniel, if Connor Scheifele-Velarde aren't giving the results, and I'm not just talking about offensively, I'm talking about defensively. We went over the 38% expected goals rate for the Connor Scheifele-Velarde line when they were together for 200 minutes of 5-on-5 play. I'm looking to see that. And also, if you're talking about a player on the back end that I think I'm, let's say, looking at as a key, key is the wrong word, because obviously Josh Morrissey and Dylan DeMello, they're your top pair, but we've seen them for so many years together that you know where you're going to get out of them. So I think you guys know where I'm going with this. I mean, even though the third pair is going to be important and looks like it's going to be Colin Miller and Hayden Fleury to start the season, but Dylan Sandberg and Neil Pionk, how do those guys mesh together in a short sample size? They were pretty good together, but how good are those guys going to be throughout the course of the season, especially when you're going up against elite competition? It's not so much, against Chicago or San Jose that I'm concerned about, but when you're going up against deep teams like Edmonton or Florida or Dallas or the Rangers or teams like that, how are those guys going to be? And I think they're going to be fine, but I'm looking at this like throughout the season. Is that going to be something where the Jets are going to have to make a move? Because obviously Colin Miller can move up to the second player on the right side, but I think you guys would agree Colin Miller is better suited at this point in his career as a third pairing defenseman, right? So those are some areas, right? Like I think Lowry, Appleton, and Niederreiter, you know what you're going to get out of that line. We talked about Morrissey and DeMello. I think Fleury and Miller will be solid as a third pair. And then when Ville Heinola comes back, boys, most likely, he takes that left side role on the third pair, and then Hayden Fleury becomes your seventh defenseman. But I think, overall, I think this team is a playoff team all day long. I just don't know if they can replicate the 110 points because of the question marks we talked about. But the area for me is easy. I mean, it's special teams. And we've already seen that early on. The penalty kill's been good in the preseason. We've seen that power play working out too with Ehlers in the bumper position. But the special teams have got to be better. But I also think that you've got to have more consistency from that second line. And I think, you've got to figure out the Ehlers usage. If Ehlers makes Scheifele and Velarde and that line better, then I'd like to see Scott Arniel hopefully do that earlier in the season as opposed to waiting till 30 or 40 games into the season. But I absolutely think the Jets are a top 4 team in the Central.
We'll get to the standings and that a little bit later on in the program this morning, but Barry White in the top right corner for a lot of the Winnipeg Jets offseason, the biggest change, if you look at it, you look at the players, the biggest change may very well have been the man behind the bench, Scott Arniel replacing Rick Bowness. From my perspective and your thoughts on this, I'm hoping that with Arniel behind the bench now, there's maybe less hesitation and less reticence to change things up when they are not working. Rick Bowness was, for all of his positive attributes, probably a little stubborn with how he deployed his forward lines and kept them together, even when the results maybe weren't there. To me, one of my X factors is going to be the coach having more willingness to try new things, to say, yes, okay, this might be working, at an okay level, but let's see if we can change things up and get it to be working at an above average level or better than okay level. That's something I'm looking to as a potential X factor for this Winnipeg Jets team.
Yeah, I mean, Drew, I think it's a fair way of putting it. And one of the things we heard early on from Scott Arniel was just the idea that when folks asked him about, Rick Bowness doing things, he goes, with all due respect to Rick, this is my team now, and we're going to do things my way. And so I'm not going to start singing for you. This is, do it my way. But the truth is,
can you though? That would be great.
Well, no, I don't. Especially maybe with my voice right now, I probably could. But my grandparents would like that one. But
here I go again on my own.
That's not the song.
That's not the right song. Dave's going to be singing Sinatra.
No, but I'm just saying Scott Arniel could also sing that song because he's on his own now as the head coach.
Ah, okay, fair enough.
That's okay.
That's a little bit of a. I understand where you're going with it as. But, Drew, I mean, yes, I think that's what everybody is going to be watching, is that if you are not having success, or if you're not, things are not running optimally, can you make those adjustments? This was supposed to be the summer of analytics in Winnipeg. We haven't heard too much about that, but how is that informing Scott Arniel's decision-making? And if it is, and he's entitled, he's the head coach. It's his head on the chopping block if things are not going well. So that to me is like, again, he's incentivized because, look, he wants to prove people wrong. He wants to prove people that he is capable of being a head coach. There were, he didn't get a head coaching role. He had a lot of assistant coaching roles or, associate coaching roles since his head coaching stint in Columbus. Was it 10, 12 years ago? But now it's his team. And again, I think he's going to try and reinforce the things that were successful for him last year and their team overall. And as we saw with the adjustments to the special teams, he's going to try and make some significant changes. Will he do that on personnel? Will he make this go out there and say, listen, like if Vilardi, Scheifele, and Connor are not working, how quick is he to pull that trigger and get Nikolai Ehlers onto that line, which again was one of the things we talked about last year. We saw how effective Vilardi, Scheifele, and Ehlers were together as a trio. So will he go to that? And again, for me, Ehlers really is critical. I mean, it's in the last year. We know he's not going to talk about his contract, but him on the top power play unit finally, and his ice time, his minutes, that to me is going to be the biggest question mark for this Winnipeg Jets club, because for years we've heard, whether it was Rick Bowness making his sort of justifications based on, well, it's really not about ice time, it's about how many shifts he's out there for, which is fine, but that was his sort of thing. Or even the Paul Maurice thought process, which was maybe he is performing optimally because those are the minutes he's playing with, and when given more minutes, maybe that wouldn't be as optimal. It's like, well, why don't you give him those more minutes and then see if he's.
I mean, those are all arguments that are, I mean, they're not. I'll say they're fine and good, but I mean, they're also just, I think, empty platitudes. I mean, we don't know what Nikolai Ehlers can do with that increased ice time, I think, which is your point. And all these coaches who've been hesitant to give it to him, they assume that they know the answer, but I'm not sure that they actually do, because it seems hard to believe that giving that kind of player, I mean, you're really talking what, 4 extra shifts a game, maybe a couple extra minutes a game, 2-3 extra minutes a game. They seem to think that there's all of a sudden going to be this steep drop off in his performance simply by giving him those minutes when nobody knows for sure. And it seems odd that they haven't even been willing to consider that as an option for so many years.
Right. And again, I think that this Jets club, especially because of the pace of the schedule to start, we'll see how much success they have. And if they have success, I mean, look, like I said, to me, from listening to Scott Arniel every day, the impression I get is that he really wants to see what Vilardi, Scheifele, and Connor can do as a trio. Once that's established under his watch, maybe under some changes in philosophy, will that perhaps make him see something different in a month's time? That's why it's so hard to evaluate these things, boys, before they actually happen. We don't know what we don't know because the games haven't been played. So, like I said, to me, Nikolai Ehlers is going to be an X factor, and also Cole Perfetti, I guess, if we're going to stick, maybe I'm going to stick with that line, because Cole Perfetti really needs to have a big year. And, we saw Ezzy what Cole Perfetti did last year to start the year. He was really hot. Then he went through that drought, was it 23 games without a goal. Cole Perfetti is betting on himself. He didn't like that usage when he was asked about it after he signed the 2-year contract. But ultimately, that's what he's doing. And so the Jets are going to want to see what they have in Cole Perfetti, and Cole Perfetti is going to want to show the Jets why they should have made a long-term commitment to him in 2024 versus 2026. But ultimately, I think if you ask me 2 players who are kind of X factors for this team, I think it's Perfetti and Ehlers.
I mean, those are very reasonable answers. I mean, and I think that they're sort of the answers that a lot of people would have. That's not a criticism, Dave, but it just goes to show you that we know with this forward group what a lot of them are bringing to the table. I mean, we know, or at least we think we know, what Connor, Scheifele, and Vilardi are going to bring to the table. We have a pretty good idea. I don't think any of us would, I think all of us would be surprised if all of a sudden Lowry, Appleton, and Niederreiter, take a significant step back. I think that would be unexpected, given the way they performed last year and the success that they had by and large.
And just to clarify, Drew, right? Because what you're saying in step back is not step back in terms of their importance on the team. You're talking about step back in terms of the minutes they get and the offensive numbers they put up.
And their impact.
Look, yeah, exactly. Because look, Nino Niederreiter scored 3 goals in the last 2 preseason games. I mean, we know Niederreiter, he's an established NHL player. He's going to get his points on the third line. Lowry and Appleton, they're going to get their points. But the point is, I think what Dave is talking about with Ehlers and Perfetti, who are obviously on the second line now, is the reason why so many people focus on Ehlers, Scheifele, and Vilardi as opposed to Connor, Scheifele, Vilardi is because Ehlers is a play driver. And when you talk about 5-on-5 minutes and his expected goals, Ehlers is a north-south player. And Jacob Stoller, I thought, very astutely pointed this out. You've got Connor and Scheifele, and the issue, they're guys that are good at getting in the offensive zone. They're guys that they can find open ice, and Scheifele can find Connor, and Connor can find Scheifele. I mean, how many times have we seen those guys score on 3-on-3 overtime? Like, there's a reason why they keep these guys together. But the point is, defensively, the Scheifele, Connor, Velarde, and they've had 200 5-on-5 minutes. So it's not like they just had one game or two games. They had many games together, not the whole season. I get it, but I think the point is, it's not just specifically about Ehlers. It's that Ehlers makes that top line better, and it takes pressure off of the second line. And then what you're hoping is that Connor, Nemesnikov, and Perfetti, that line is better by making that switch. So it's not just about one individual player. It's optimizing your top two lines. And I think that's why I can hear the argument.
But for me, it's more about than optimizing your top two lines. It's about optimizing your roster, all 12 of them, whomever the 12 are, which is why I think it was so intriguing earlier. I think it was just this week where you saw Brad Lambert lining up. I think it was just in practice, Dave. You'll know better than me at this point. That, where Lambert was lining up, between two veteran guys flanking him on the wings, where just, I think that
Brad Lambert can't do what Adam Lowry can do, right? Like, you can't have Lambert taking key faceoffs and killing penalties. Like, Lambert, they have Lambert pegged as a top 6 guy. So I don't know. You can't have Lambert as a third line center. It's just not going to work.
But you have this forward depth that's enviable. So why not try and put a younger player in there with a high skill level who can have the insulation from veterans on either side of him? And maybe that's optimizing your lineup. Just because they're waiver exempt. I mean, what more could Nikita Chibrikov really have done this training camp to, identify himself as a player that should be in the, could very well play in the Jets top 12. He's been very impressive.
He was great.
He was great. So, just because he's waiver exempt doesn't mean that he shouldn't make the team. So I just want to see the Jets maybe be less rigid in their thinking when it comes to using their 12 forwards. Again, the defense, given the injuries right now, is probably more set than the forward group. With the forwards, with Chibrikov, with Lambert, I want to see less rigidity from the coaching staff. I want to see them saying, okay, let's try things that we haven't necessarily tried before, because we don't fully know if it's going to work. And if it doesn't work, okay, so you step back. But until you try it, you don't know. And I think that there's probably an opportunity, at least to try a little bit earlier in the year when the games maybe are a little easier to play, so you get these guys up to speed at some point in time. And I know, and I agree with you, Dave, that AHL seasoning is important, but at some point in time, the chicken might be over seasoned, and as a result, it might not taste as good as it would if the seasoning was more equitably distributed.
I'm thinking about seasoning and chicken, and like, I had a lot of chicken the last couple of days, but look, I'm all for, guys playing for the Moose and getting chances to, establish themselves in a lot less of a pressure situation than with the NHL, where the mistakes are magnified by 1,000. And as I've said, a guy can make an error. Mark Morrison doesn't hesitate to put him back on the ice. The guy makes an error in the NHL, he's stapled to the bench and then probably not playing the next game. So there's a lot more on the line. There's a lot more at stake, and there's a lot more pressure. Now, what do they say? Pressure creates diamonds. Sometimes you're going to give those guys that opportunity. And
I've never heard that. I like that.
There you go. But
we'll explain it to you after.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not.
I don't understand it at all, but
okay, we'll explain it to you after. Dave, you can show him how the science works later.
Sure. But the truth is that, like I said, can a guy step up? I'm with you, Drew. Like, if a guy's made the team, regardless, like, you have to pay attention to the waivers. You have to pay attention.
Well, exactly. Because Dave, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but we already talked about, most likely if Lambert makes the team, you're putting Kupari on waivers. right? Or Jared Anderson Dolan, I guess you're putting on waivers. But if Chibrikov is making the team, then you're talking about, like, are you putting Alex Iafallo on waivers? Like, I'm with you, Drew. I agree with the rigidity comment, but I think you have several players who are in the last year. Like, I look at Nikita Chibrikov, and I look at him as, if the Jets don't re-sign Appleton, Chibrikov is a guy who can play on your third line on the wing, right? Like, I just think there's too many players ahead of them with more NHL experience, and that's what's preventing Lambert and Chibrikov. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying, like, Lambert and Chibrikov did everything they needed to do to make this team, but it looks like they're still going to be sent down to the AHL.
Last word to you on this, Dave, after, as he said, he didn't mean to cut you off, but cut you off.
Well, I may have lost my train of thought, but I'm just saying that,
Sorry about that, Dave.
Well, no, it's fine. But I just think, like, what it comes down to is that you want to see, if a guy makes your roster, then the waiver element. And again, I don't want to be naive and be like, well, it shouldn't matter. But, like, the truth is this: if I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff, I want Scott Arniel to play the best lineup that I have. And, you've got some depth now in the farm with guys like Toninato and Axel Jonsson-Fjällby and Mason Shaw. Those three guys all cleared. You've got Simon Lundmark, you cleared that, so you've got some depth there. So that's good, right? And you've got, of course, the other guys who you sent down, who were able to be assigned directly to the AHL franchise. But the fact of the matter is that you've got the depth, so you don't really have to worry if you put Rasmus Kupari on waivers, I don't see it in Rasmus Kupari yet. Now, I know that Scott Arniel says he wants to see what he's got in him. He wants to give him those 10 games in a row, 15 games in a row, give him some minutes at the NHL
see more
level.
Offense out of him, Dave.
That's what I mean. Like, you can't score one goal. Like, you have to actually be able to produce if you're going to be in the lineup. And that's what we've talked about. You can't have two lines that are simply treading water and not getting, they're sitting around zero in terms of whether they're not scoring goals, but they're not allowing goals against. I mean, obviously that's ideal rather than being a negative, but the fact of the matter is you just really need to have production, and you don't want it obviously to come at the expense of structure. But one of the things I talked about with Mark Morrison last year, we talked about it with Craig Heisinger, the assistant general manager of the Jets, and of course the general manager of the Manitoba Moose in our end of season roundtable, was that fact that they did see these young players improving in certain areas. Especially Mark Morrison talked about Brad Lambert's, jump in terms of his defensive play. Now, for Lambert, who gained, I think we talked about it, like 8 pounds in terms of his muscle and didn't impact his speed. One of the things is, what's it going to be like when he goes up as a center? I mean, it is a big ask for him to be up against a guy like Adam Lowry, or a Ryan, like whatever you want to talk about. Who's
a grown man.
Yeah. And to try and, like, we did see him get pushed around a few times during the preseason. And I wonder if that is the one sort of hesitation that the organization has with Lambert, and giving him another season playing against, men in pro at the AHL level. And again, I'm not saying it's going to be the whole season, but maybe that's the thought. And again, removing a little bit of that pressure on him to start, perhaps. And again, do I think he's capable of playing at the NHL level? I think so. Absolutely. I think we saw what he did last year. Do I think it's going to hurt him and make him take a step back if he has to play in the AHL to some degree? No, because to be honest with you, I was of the opinion that he was going to be spending his time back and forth in the AHL and the NHL this season. But ultimately, like I said, you want the organization to be making the best decisions based on how they're going to win hockey games, not whether this guy's waiver exempt. And I understand that it's business, but again, you've managed to get some guys down to give you that depth. You don't have to worry. So that's why if you lose a forward, if you lose someone on waivers because Brad Lambert forced himself onto the team, well, then so be it.
There you go. Dave Emmett said he had the final word. When we come back, we're commercial free until the top of the hour. After this last break, we'll delve into the Central Division. We'll give our predicted order of finish. We'll talk about who's going to win the West, who's going to win the East, and who's going to win Lord Stanley's Cup. Season preview show continues. Tons of Jets talk to come here on the YouTube channel, and of course, all day long, all weekend long, all the time on illegalcurve.com. Stay tuned. Much more to come.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling sites instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now, you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
20 minutes before the top of the hour, Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg on this Saturday morning. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show rolls on. It's brought to you by our friends at Play Now. Sign up for Play Now and get a casino welcome bonus of up to $150. Play Now is Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site and the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Conditions apply. 18 plus. Enjoy responsibly. It's amazing, gentlemen, that Wednesday night we start post-game show one of at least 82. And we're going to be at Boston Pizza on Taylor Avenue, our home away from home, for that post-game show. But I'm excited to get back into it with the post-game shows starting this coming Wednesday and then after each and every Winnipeg Jets game moving forward. Let's talk about the upcoming season. Let's talk about the Jets vis-a-vis.
Sorry, Drew. Big shout out. I think Larry's spending his birthday with us here. I noticed a lot of people in the chat are wishing Larry a happy birthday. So happy birthday from IC to Larry.
Yes, there you go.
Happy birthday, Larry.
Yes, thank you for joining us this morning and celebrating your birthday with us here. Let's talk about the Central Division. That's where the Winnipeg Jets, of course, reside. That's where they're going to need to finish in the top 3 to guarantee themselves a playoff spot. A 4th place spot should probably also do it when you look at the Pacific Division and the possibility of a crossover. I don't look at the Pacific as being an overwhelmingly tough division or an overwhelmingly strong division. So when you compare,
good at the top.
At the top, yes. At the top, fine. That's sure. And it certainly helps the Vegas Golden Knights that all of a sudden, magic of all magic, they get cap relief out of nowhere just because Robin Lehner wasn't. I mean, look, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant for a second. The salary cap in the NHL matters, except for when certain teams say it doesn't matter anymore. And this isn't about Robin Lehner. Robin Lehner as a person needs to do whatever is best for Robin Lehner. His career is over, tragically, unfortunately, because of a hip injury. And he decided not to show up in Vegas for his preseason physical. And we know his history of bipolar disorder and mental health issues. And I am not reducing those whatsoever. It is unbelievably important, and he's been heroic in speaking out about those issues. So let's separate the two things. Robin Lehner as a person needs to focus on Robin Lehner first and foremost and make sure that he's in the right mindset and the mind space. And the NHL and the NHLPA deserve kudos for supporting him. But all of a sudden, because he doesn't show up in Vegas, an agreement is magically reached, and his salary cap hit no longer applies to the Vegas Golden Knights. A salary cap hit that was going to put the Golden Knights into LTIR, was not going to see them accrue any salary cap space throughout the course of the season, and thus handcuff their ability to improve their team via the trade market throughout the course of the year. If I'm one of the other 31 teams in the NHL, I'm screaming bloody murder. All of a sudden, a team that has been unbelievably aggressive, to their credit, in going out to acquire talent, now gets a free get out of jail space because of some agreement is reached. Are the other 31 teams allowed to do this? It's bull when it happens. It's not the first time it's happened in the NHL. It's amazing. Every other team has to worry about salary cap space, except for certain teams on occasion when some random circumstances apply. It's absolute garbage, and the NHL and the other teams should stand up and say, no, that you cannot use Robin Lehner's circumstances as an excuse for the Vegas Golden Knights to get out of salary cap jail. It's bull is what it is.
Amen, Drew. It's been a while since we've seen a Drew cold hard rant.
Well, it's
like
just garbage. I just
no,
don't
it is. It is.
understand why the other teams don't say something about it.
Right.
You know, that's my point about it, is why the other teams are just sitting back, at least publicly, saying, oh, okay, it's fine. Vegas is now going to go pick our bones come trade deadline and acquire Thomas Hertl again, or some other equivalent thereof.
Who's gonna be this year's Thomas Hertl, right? Like, it was ridiculous. And remember, Bob McKenzie broke that with like 20 minutes left in the trade deadline. You remember that, guys? So yes, if we can transition from that, though, to the Central Division, I think
blood pressure is skyrocketing.
Absolutely. I think the Central Division is going to be absolutely fascinating this year because of the additions Nashville made, because of the additions Utah made, Chicago. Like, we're obviously going to see the Chicago Blackhawks for the Jets home opener.
Yeah.
But I think that Hawks team, what did they have? 52 points last year, 53 points last year. I mean, they're going to have more points than this year, guys. Like, when you go out and you acquire guys like Tyler Bertuzzi and bring back Teuvo Teravainen, and they brought in TJ Brody and Alec Martinez on the back end. You've brought in Laurent Brossoit, who I think, Dave, I saw that he was dealing with something. I'm not sure if he's been.
He had to have surgery.
Yeah, he had surgery early in training camp.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how long he's going to be out. Luckily, they have Peter Mrazek there, who's the number one goalie right now. But obviously, they didn't bring in Brossoit to be a backup to Peter Mrazek. But the point is, the Central Division, and Chicago included, are going to be better this year. And it was a very good division last year, right? With the Jets, the Avalanche, and the Stars battling for first, right? So, I mean, I think it's really tough to predict the order. I mean, we're going to get into it, or I don't know if you want the predictions now, Drew, but
yeah, sure. Give me your order. Give me your order, because I want to hear Dave's, and then I want to get everything in.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I still have Dallas number one. Big shocker. We had Mike McIntyre on about half an hour, 40 minutes ago. He picked Dallas, like 113 points last year, guys. And I mean, it's essentially the same team as last year. There's no reason why I wouldn't pick Dallas. I don't think they're going to run away with the division. Like, I don't think they're going to win the division by 10 points or 15 points, but I'm still going to be going Dallas 1, Colorado 2. I want to go Nashville 1 or 2, but I'm going to go with Nashville 3. I wouldn't be surprised if Nashville wins the division or finishes second. But I have the Jets finishing 4th, and I also think they're going to be a wild card team this year. I have them kind of in the high 90s, low 100s, and that's not a bad thing. I just don't think the Jets are going to replicate 110 points as they did last year. I just don't see them going on that same run. Obviously, Hellebuck's going to have another phenomenal year. That's all he does. I just think with the increased the improvements, I should say, in the Central Division, like I already talked about, I think that it's going to be tough for the Jets to replicate that. So I have them finishing 4th in the wild card, and then I think Utah is going to finish 5th, and I think they're going to give the Jets a run for their money for that last wild card spot.
Yeah, Utah to me is really the team to keep an eye on. I mean, I think that they're obviously improved on the ice. They've made some acquisitions that are improving the team itself. But I think there's also going to be a significant boost from just getting out from underneath the amateur hour that was their circumstances in Arizona. It's hard to win when that your ownership group is just an utter tire fire and you're playing in a college arena and your dressing room is minor league. I think just the transition to a professionally run organization, albeit one that has some obstructed seats for the time being in Salt Lake City, but I just think that is going to be such a boost to them that I think that they also very well might be a playoff team, Ezzy. So I'm with you on Utah being a really not the walkover team that they've been for so many years when they were the Arizona Coyotes, Dave.
Yeah, and look, for me, Nashville is an interesting team, but they're an older team too. So I wonder about health for Nashville, and that to me is something they're going to have to really focus on because you lose. I mean, let's be realistic, guys. These are a lot of the guys that are on their team are older, right? Now they have some good youth, as we've seen. They have a lot of the guys who've come up through the Milwaukee Admirals. In the AHL and really had an impact.
Luke Evangelista.
Yeah, there's so many guys that that have gone through Milwaukee and now play for Nashville or I guess other organizations. But ultimately, they've got some good young talent. But like I said, to me, that Nashville is definitely an improved team. And Dallas, I think Mike said it. I agree with him. They are the class of the NHL still, the Central. Sorry, and yeah, like Colorado in that second spot. I've got Nashville in the third, and I've got Winnipeg in the fourth. And like you guys, I'm not trying to just be, taking the easy way out, but I do think that Utah has improved, and I think that there's going to be a general excitement around that hockey club that there hasn't been in a few years because of the ownership group, that the stability there, and the plans and the excitement for hockey in that state. So I think there's going to be they'll have and they have a young and up and coming team, right? Ezzy, they've got like a 4,000 draft picks. I yes, just to be clear, that is some hyperbole. I just want to make, unlike last week when I said 10 years for the last Jets hat trick, and Doug got mad at me because it had only been 5. But so I'm just being clear that I'm saying it's a bit of an exaggeration.
I told you he keeps receipts, folks. He keeps receipts like nobody I know.
I remember, but anyway, so yeah, I think Utah is the team to watch out. Like, I don't think St. Louis is going to be anything. I don't think Minnesota is going to be anything, with all due respect to the Flower having his final season in the NHL. And Chicago's, sure, they've made some moves, but I'm not particularly impressed. They don't impress me much, as Shania Titwain would say. And I think they've covered the rest of the teams in the Central. So to me, really, it's a Winnipeg, Utah thing, and we'll see how that goes for both those clubs.
Just want to say one thing quickly about Utah. I mean, when people think of Utah, they often think of Clayton Keller, who had 75, 80 points last year, and they think of Nick Schmaltz. Obviously, Logan Cooley, for those who are into playoff pools, I'm not going to say take him in the first round or anything like that, but he had a very underrated rookie year last year, 20 goals, 44 points. Logan Cooley, I think, is primed for even more of a breakout season. So all I'm going to say is Cooley is a guy that, as their second line center, if you're in a hockey pool, maybe pick him up late in your pool.
Well, and I look at the Pacific Division, and I think the Edmonton Oilers are clearly the class of the division. And to me, they're probably I mean, I'll spoiler alert. I think the Oilers win the cup this year is what I think happens there. But I look at that Pacific Division, and Edmonton is my top team there. I mean, Vegas, I think, is still going to be a damn good team now that they especially get that salary cap relief. Vancouver, I think, is going to continue to be a good team, not as good as they were last year. But there's no bigger injury in the preseason, as far as I'm concerned, than Drew Doughty. You look at that.
Absolutely.
You look at that LA defense now. I mean, LA, which was a playoff team last year, that team is not very good anymore. You look at that back end for the Los Angeles Kings without Drew Doughty, and I don't see the Kings, being able to withstand that injury. So I think that potentially opens up another spot, or makes it such that the Pacific Division is only going to be a 3-team playoff division. I mean, LA I don't know how you handle that injury. You look at that back end, and it just doesn't have the requisite talent, to I think withstand that, because they also don't have the goaltender to be able to handle that as well. So to me, that is just such a massive injury that changes the complexion of the Pacific Division and their playoff race, and as a result changes the Central Division race, with I think the Central getting a second wild card team.
Yeah, it's possible. And I think, Drew, because you know how big of a Doughty fan I am. He's one of my favorite players of all time. It's because how many minutes he plays, right? Like he plays in all situations. That's the equivalent. It really is the equivalent of the Jets losing Josh Morrissey. It's 100% equivalent.
Right.
And, you think about the defensemen that they've lost over the years, whether that's Sean Walker, whether that's Sean Dursey, right? Like that defense is not as deep as it used to be. Like Brant Clark is a defenseman. He's in his second year. He's a guy I really like. And they've obviously got Gavrikov there still on the left side. But, you're asking a lot out of Mikey Anderson. You're asking a lot out of Jordan Spence, right? So I agree with you. Like right now, I think I didn't have LA in the playoffs with Doughty in the lineup, to be honest with you. But, and I mean, remember, think about last year, guys, with Cam Talbot and David Riddick. Was Big Save Dave with the Kings. His goals against and save percentage were really solid, actually. But I'm not as high on the Kings as some other people. Like, still love Anze Kopitar, Quentin Byfield. Like, up the middle, they're solid. But yes, Drew, you're absolutely right. That Doughty injury is completely devastating to their early season fortunes and possibly playoff fortunes, right? So I think you got two Canadian teams at the top of that division all day long. I see Edmonton and Vancouver are going to be duking it out for first in that division. And my maybe hot take or my surprise team that I'm finishing to finish third is the Kraken.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the Kraken, who obviously had that successful year a couple years ago, and then were just really pretty terrible last year. They still sort of have, a decent amount of forward depth. I mean, Seattle is the team, I think, out of the Pacific that could potentially surprise. Is probably the fourth best team in the Pacific Division. Now, whether or not that translates into a playoff spot or not, will depend on, I think, largely what happens, to some extent in the Central Division.
Those acquisitions, Drew, Chandler Stevenson,
they overpaid for him, but yes,
they did. You're right. Yep. And often, I mean, we say that all the time in free agency. Guys are over. I mean, I'm a Devils fan, and Brett Pesce was definitely overpaid, but I'm happy to have Pesce on the back end because he's a solid top four right side defenseman. But
it also takes away from a division rival.
Right. I mean, and Brandon Montour, to me, was one of the more underrated signings. And you could argue that he's overpaid, but I mean, look, we saw them make the playoffs in their inaugural season. I mean, they're very deep at forward, obviously led by Matty Beniers and Jared McCann on that top line. But I'm with you, Drew. I don't know if it's a surprise to pick the Kraken to make the playoffs, but I think that they're going to be right up there with the Oilers and Canucks. I don't think that they're going to win the division, but I would see them I could see the Kraken being in that 100 to 105 point range.
Okay, so who wins the West from both of your perspectives?
You want to go, Dave?
No, you go.
Let Dave. Okay, as he goes first.
Well, I mean, I want to pick someone else aside from Edmonton,
right?
But I just don't see it. And I like the moves that the Edmonton Oilers made in the offseason. Like, I think bringing in Jeff Skinner to give you some offense in the bottom six, I like that move. I think Stuart Skinner has now established himself as a number one goalie. I don't think he's a top 5 NHL goalie or even top 10 NHL goalie, but I do think he's an above average NHL goalie. But I honestly think, guys, that this team has unfinished business. And I mean, with the way McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins lead this team offensively and the supporting cast they have around them, I mean, to call Zach Hyman a 50 goal scorer, the supporting cast, I mean, is kind of shows you how good the Oilers are, right? So I kind of want to take Dallas or maybe even Colorado to come out of the West, but I can't bet against Edmonton coming out of the West this year.
Okay, as he's on the record, Dave.
You see the look on Connor McDavid's face after that Game 7 loss, and you just know that guy, the best player by a mile in the NHL, is going to be super motivated because he was that close and fell just short. And folks can not like the Edmonton Oilers all they want, but when you've got the best player in the world, for years it was Sidney Crosby willing his team to victory. And I got to tell you, like with the supporting cast he has, and yes, defensively they're not the strongest team, But I think with the forwards that they've got and having that experience of getting almost to the top of the mountain, I think that this is the year that I think they'll repeat for sure, I think, as the Western Conference champs.
We're all in very serious trouble because the three of us agree on that. And that's just an absolute recipe for disaster. Nothing good has ever come from the three of us agreeing on anything. But that seems to be there's unanimous opinions out of the illegal curve guys that the Oilers are the class of the Western Conference and will likely be the representative out of the East as you start there.
Yeah, I mean, we had Mike McIntyre on, an hour and 15 minutes ago, and we were talking about his Devils prediction. Look, there's nothing more in the world that I want to do than pick the Devils to get to the Eastern Conference Final. I mean, I still think that the Rangers are going to be the top team in the Metro Division, so I'm going to not take the Devils, even though I really want to. But look, I've picked this team many times before to go to the Stanley Cup Final and even win it, so I'm going to go with them again this year. I'm going with the Carolina Hurricanes. So I guess we're going with a rematch of the 2006 Stanley Cup Final, but realize the Carolina Hurricanes ran into the New York Rangers last year in the playoffs. So that's going to be the hurdle that they have to overcome. But I just still look at this roster, and from top to bottom, like obviously Seth Jarvis just signed the big contract. But on defense, love the Sean Walker acquisition. And obviously, in goal, it's not, the two goalies that you'd say are the top goalies in the league, but Freddie Anderson and Kochetkov give them really solid goaltending. But it's the defense, it's the way that they're coached. I'm a big Sebastian Aho fan, obviously, but for me, it's the Hurricanes. I think they're going to be the team that comes out of the Eastern Conference, and I'm not going to say who I'm going to pick to win the Stanley Cup yet, but yeah, I'm very high on the Hurricanes as usual, and I feel like I've picked them now 3 or 4 times to go to the Stanley Cup Final, so they've got to do it eventually, right?
You'd think so. Dave, out of the East?
Well, if Ezzy's going to leave me the Devils, I will take the Devils.
Really?
Well, their big thing was goaltending, and they finally got the goaltending. I mean, Jacob Markstrom made one of the nicest saves of the year. Easy for me to say. There's only been one game at that point. Yesterday, or the other day. I think Markstrom is might be the difference maker. And of course, they're going to need guys to stay healthy, but I like the Devils. They've been a young and up and coming team for a lot of years. And I think this is their, they haven't done it yet, obviously in the playoffs. So that'll be the big question mark. But I like New Jersey coming out of the East.
Very reasonable. Look, I'm going to, until somebody proves that they're not the kings of the NHL, and I'm not talking about the Los Angeles ones, I'll go with the Panthers. Still got that talent up front. The defense is probably a little bit weaker than they were last year. Got Bobrovsky in that. Why not? Why not see a rematch of last year's epic 7-game Stanley Cup Final? That's where I'll go from my perspective. Shades of the Red Wings. What was it? The
Pittsburgh.
Red Wings and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, 08 and 09.
There you go. All those years ago. Ezzy.
So Nate Schmidt is going to the Stanley Cup Final. That's what you're saying, Drew.
Why not? Why not? Ezzy, Stanley Cup champion.
I'm going to take the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, the Oilers were so close to winning the Stanley Cup. And yes, I am saying that a Canadian team is going to win the Stanley Cup for the first time since the Montreal Canadiens, led by Eric Desjardins, won the Stanley Cup in 1993. Obviously not led by Eric Desjardins, but he was on the back end for that team. But I'm taking the Oilers, like Dave just touched on it. I mean, look, they were a goal away from sending that Game 7 to overtime, right? So I think they've got unfinished business, and I just look at that team led by McDavid and Draisaitl, and the emergence of Evan Bouchard in the back end, Stuart Skinner establishing himself as a number 1 goaltender, Zach Hyman scoring 50 goals. I mean, Nugent Hopkins is a great second-line guy. I just think this team is going to be tough to beat in the playoffs. So I'm going to take the Oilers.
Dave?
No surprise. I mean, I already basically said it in my original answer. So yeah, I will echo what Mr. Ginsburg said and go with the Oilers this year.
We just need to apologize on behalf of us to all the people in Edmonton who are fans of the Oilers, because some sort of catastrophe is coming your way, because we all agree that the Edmonton Oilers are likely to win the Stanley Cup, and there's nothing good that's going to come out of that trio of predictions. But there you have it. You can throw it back at us in about 8 months' time. The regular season is already underway, although
by the way, we want people to share your predictions in the chat and on the video so we can come back and reference them. Probably
that's right. Exactly. We want get on the record so we can go back and you can throw it in our faces, or we can throw it back in your faces. The regular season for the Winnipeg Jets gets underway on Wednesday. We'll be at Boston Pizza on Taylor, a watch party for the Jets and the Oilers, and then the Illegal Curve post-game show. Looking forward to that. Dave, yes.
Couple of notes before we get going. We got to make sure. First of all, some folks have asked, Dylan DeMello is fine. He got hit in the head with a puck late in the third period of the game last night in Calgary. Scott Arneal was asked about it, and he said everybody came through fine. So it looks like it clipped him in the visor. Could have been bad. He did pause on the bench briefly. So good news that he seems to be fine, because that could have been an inopportune time for late in a meaningless game for him to go down. But good news on that. And then the other thing we should mention, a couple of prospect notes. Braden Yeager, 2023 first rounder. He is back in Moose Jaw, named captain this week of the Moose Jaw Warriors, 36th captain in their team history. And he had 2 goals in his debut. They lost to the Lethbridge Hurricanes, but he had 2 goals last night, And then the other thing we should mention, Colby Barlow. He also, same day as Yeager, was signed to junior. Of course, he didn't want to go back and play in Owen Sound, and he got traded in a big blockbuster deal with the Oshawa Generals. So Colby Barlow, I think he's actually playing against Kevin He tonight. So if he's in the lineup for the Oshawa Generals. So a couple of things happening with the young
Kevin He's on London, right?
No, Kevin He is not. He's on Niagara.
Right.
There you
I'm thinking
go.
of Jacob Julian.
Jacob Julian's on London.
Yeah.
There you go. You're allowed to make that mistake. We'll forgive you on that front there, Mr. Ginsburg. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. As Dave said, keep your predictions coming. Throw them in the chat. Throw them on the video of the page. If you're catching this after, smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the podcast. Leave us your feedback. And, of course, remember that illegalcurve.com is your home for all the latest Winnipeg Jets and Manitoba Moose news, audio, video, everything under the sun. We look forward to you checking out the website as well. Big thanks to Mike McIntyre for joining us this morning. Big thanks to all of our sponsors who make the Saturday show and the post-game show a possibility. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Play Now, Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place, Tough Duck, and Seagram's. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. The contest on the Instagram page, on the Facebook page. We want to send you to the home opener in conjunction with Play Now. Go check that out. Enter the contest. We're going to draw the winner on Monday morning. We're looking forward to that. Until Wednesday, and right around midnight, but of course you're going to be at Boston Pizza Taylor for the watch party before that. It's going to be the inaugural or the season premiere of the Illegal Curve postgame show. That's coming up on Wednesday. Next Sunday for the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, not Saturday. We'll be in synagogue Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Much more to come. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Have a great rest of your weekend. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday or Sunday next week, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.